In September 1598, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man who brought an end to more than 100 years of civil war in Japan, died in his sleep at age 62. He had hoped to pass on his ruling position to his 5-year-old son, trusting that his top aides would shelter the boy until he came of age. It was not to be. Hideyoshi's right-hand man, Tokugawa Ieyasu, wanted the power for himself. He amassed an army of 74,000 followers and led it against a force of 80,000 Toyotomi loyalists. The two armies clashed at a strategic crossroads called Sekigahara on October 21st, 1600. At the start of the battle, the Toyotomi warriors were already in place. Tokugawa Ieyasu advanced his samurai against them under the cover of early morning fog. As opposing groups of warriors blundered into one another, skirmishing broke out along the lines. Initially, the element of surprise gave the Tokugawa forces an advantage. But as the fog lifted and fighting intensified, momentum shifted against them. It looked as though Tokugawa Ieyasu might go down in defeat. Then, just in the nick of time, he saved himself with an adept political move.
What shows Ieyasu's brilliance at Sekigahara is not that he brings more men to the field, but that he subverts the unity of the opposite side.
Ieyasu sent agents to coax the commander of a sizable portion of the enemy force to change sides. It worked, and the Toyotomi forces were overwhelmed. It was an epic battle in samurai history. Tokugawa Ieyasu was now the undisputed military leader of Japan. Unlike his predecessor, he had every intention of claiming the venerated title of shogun. Tradition, of course, required that he be of Minamoto clan descent to qualify. He wasn't, but he devised a way to circumvent that annoying technicality.
Tokugawa Ieyasu had to present to the emperors a falsified genealogy in order to prove that he was a descendant of the Minamoto. And of course, this was known to the imperial family, but it was a kind of a pro forma thing. And so once a fairly convincing document was presented to them, they could close an eye on whether it was absolutely historically accurate.
Ieyasu assumed the office of shogun with great fanfare in 1603. He set up his shogunate, his military government, in Edo, modern-day Tokyo, and peace soon settled over the land. It was a peace Ieyasu would enforce with an iron fist. A key to this enforcement amounted to a sort of formalized system of hostage-taking, a practice long in use by powerful daimyo to help maintain domestic tranquility.
It wasn't uncommon for daimyo, in order to cement an alliance amongst each other, to exchange relatives. And you'd have some very odd ones, like sending your mother to stay with a new ally, just to show that even though we've met on the battlefield before, I'm not going to attack you. You send me a daughter, you send me a son, I'll send you a daughter, I'll send you my mother, and you'd exchange relatives, really to show that you were committed to not fighting each other, to remaining allies.
Ieyasu's system required all daimyo to maintain a residence near the shogunal headquarters in Edo. He demanded that they live there much of the time.
They're allowed to maintain a castle in their homeland, and they're allowed to maintain that home base. But every other year, they need to travel to Edo and live in a villa, which can be rather lavish, but can't be particularly well fortified. In fact, it's supposed to be a non-military residence in the shadow of Edo Castle, Tokugawa Ieyasu's castle, and they live there roughly half the time, because they travel there, they live there for a period of maybe 10 months, then they travel back.
But while a daimyo was away visiting his property, his family members had to remain in Edo. As an added measure of control, the new shogun's government closely monitored travel. These conditions made it virtually impossible for regional lords to clandestinely join together, muster armies, and rise in revolt. Eventually, the new shogun even all but sealed Japan's borders to keep out rebellious influences from abroad. Most Japanese could not travel to other countries, and only a few select foreigners could visit Japan or establish trading posts on the islands.
He divided his enemies so brilliantly that by the time he dies, the Tokugawa regime is this solid dynasty that lasts over 250 years.
This extended peace, however, ultimately had a profound impact on samurai culture and identity. For 600 years, the primary purpose of most samurai had been warfare. The majority of them did not farm or construct buildings or conduct business of any kind. They had earned their living by training for and engaging in combat. But with the long-lasting peace brought by the Tokugawa shogunate, samurai weren't quite sure what to do with themselves. They each still received a stipend for being a warrior, but warrior skills were no longer in demand.
The samurai could literally do nothing. They could be idle from morning till night. They could read books, they could philosophize about the beauty of honor and nobility and committing seppuku and all that, and they didn't have to have a real job.
Grasping for a sense of purpose, many threw themselves into teaching and study. Martial arts schools blossomed and became even more formalized and ritualistic, especially schools that specialized in sword technique.
If you're going to train in some sort of martial art, you might as well train primarily with the weapon that you're always carrying, as opposed to training in spearmanship or archery or whatever, because you're not ever going to use that. If you're ever going to get into a street fight with a weapon, for example, or whatever, you're probably going to defend yourself with your swords.
But not all samurai concentrated on study and teaching. Some became public administrators and bureaucrats. Still others took up poetry and the arts, or entered the monasteries. And it was all done with great intensity and an exaggerated sense of importance. It was as if they needed to convince themselves and everyone else that they still deserved their place at the head of society.
Warrior behavior became stylized, where the importance of martial arts, the importance of spiritual beliefs, all those things that we associate with the samurai, I really see as being a creation of the 17th century. When we have peace in Japan, and we have to find out, well, we have these sword-bearing officials who get income, what is their purpose? There's no wars. And I think that there's this real sense that they try to create this sort of code of conduct.
In the late 17th and early 18th centuries, several samurai scholars composed written works that attempted to set forth rules and philosophies by which all samurai should live. These works had similar themes, stressing the concepts of the preservation of personal honor, mastering of the martial arts, and setting an example for the rest of society. And most importantly, duty to one's lord to the point of death. This set of ideals collectively became known as the Warrior Code. One work that explored this code, called Hagakure, Hidden Behind Leaves, stressed the importance of self-sacrifice, but it also contained elaborate instructions for the day-to-day conduct of a samurai.
It goes through these incredible descriptions of what the samurai must do with himself. You know, he must be incredibly sanitary and clean. He must prepare his nails in a certain way. He must always carry rouge in his side bag because he may die. And when he dies, he doesn't want to look pale or frightened. So he must always be ready to present the front of someone who has eagerly chosen death. When the samurai goes out to battle, he must burn incense in his helmet so that when he is beheaded by his victor, he will present to the victor who rips the helmet off a pleasant, an aesthetic, a memorable experience.
Such musings may have simply been a luxury of peace, a peace that at the time of the writing of Hagakure had already lasted over 80 years. In centuries past, when battle was frequent, warriors were often forced to take a more pragmatic approach to self-sacrifice.
One of the documents I looked